Which sense could you not live without? Hearing, taste, sight, touch, smell? I remember learning about the senses and the teacher asking the class this question. My vote was always sight, and most of the class agreed. Maybe that is because images teach us so much. Spoken words and images create such a powerful learning experience that parents are told to read to their newborns. As we age, picture books may be set aside, but we are still taught by others through spoken words and images. How do we teach adults new skills? Very often by putting them in a room with a speaker who shares visual images using PowerPoint. It may be less exciting than Dr. Seuss, but slideshows are popular visual aids for public speaking. Presentation software like PowerPoint allows a speaker to share more than just their words with an audience. While PowerPoint can add to a speaker's effectiveness, it can also turn an audience against the speaker. Slides can be used as a crutch for an underprepared speaker. Slideshows can also be so long that viewers get fatigued. For this reason, many people have a love-hate relationship with PowerPoint. When an audience turns on a speaker, it is termed death by PowerPoint. So where can we look for guidance on creating slideshows that engage an audience instead of putting them to sleep? Let's start by reminding ourselves how communication works. When people communicate, the sender and receiver work in tandem to code and decode messages. Ideally, they reach a shared understanding of meaning. The same thing happens without words using images. But for it to be successful, the images have to be interpreted by the speaker and the audience in a similar way. Because we are talking about visual communication, we should consider what design theory can teach us about public speaking. Visual communication theory is an area of study in graphic design, marketing, filmmaking, and computer animation. Using the popular text Visual Communication Design by Meredith Davis and Jamer Hunt, let's consider what design theory can teach us about creating slideshows. Visual images add a new level of content to a speaker's presentation. Meredith Davis and Jamer Hunt explain that viewers interpret visual images via denotation and connotation. Denotation is what the viewer considers the literal meaning of a word or image. For example, when a viewer sees this, it denotes apple as a fruit. But the apple means more to people than just a piece of fruit. The connotation is all the other associations the audience has with an apple. When images with connotations are used strategically, they allow a speaker to communicate more in fewer words. When adding images, an important consideration is image complexity. For maximum effectiveness, the image should be simple. Complex images, like this basket of multicolored apples, take longer for the viewer to process. Notice that each image of apples has a different connotation. Multiple apples in a basket can bring to mind fall, harvest, the concept of bounty. These connotations are different than what a single apple image implies. When we choose complex images, the message could be diluted. These two images help illustrate why selecting images for your slideshow should not be an afterthought. Plan them carefully and with intention. Next, let's consider the role of color when designing a presentation. Does the color choice of your text or background matter? Experts say it could because color choice influences the perception of the viewer. Research suggests that complementary colors like these draw attention of the viewer. This is why school colors and company logos often use complementary colors. One exception is the use of red and green. These colors are associated with Christmas and should be used with caution. Now consider this image. It divides colors as either warm or cool. Visual communication research explains that viewers respond to cool and warm colors differently. The soft blues and greens of cool colors are thought to be preferred by audiences and considered more relaxing. In contrast, warm greens and yellows can activate the viewer's attention, but also have a more negative valence. Using high contrast complementary colors is always a good suggestion for presentations. The style and topic of your speech can help determine if you want energizing warm tones or more calming cool tones. How much of an image to use is also a communication design decision. One image can tell many stories. Here we have a lovely young woman that has a lot of style. If her image is projected onto the screen during presentation, the audience has many aspects of the image to interpret. If my presentation is on eyewear, I should crop the image to draw attention to her glasses. That pulls the viewer to the aspect of her body that I want to emphasize. Well-cropped images help the speaker communicate with intent.
When we crop and place an image, we should also think about image coding. In Western culture, we interpret images the way we interpret text. We look from left to right and top to bottom. When placing images or headings, consider the order of their placement. If you want to draw attention to an object, sometimes breaking the rules of cultural coding can help pull in the viewer. Notice this image. The focus is on the stones. The stones are in the bottom right-hand corner of the image. Our instinct is to expect visual information in the upper left of the image. This break in cultural coding gives added attention to the stones and makes the image more striking. Another factor to consider when choosing imagery for a presentation is scale. When visual images are not in the traditional size and scale we expect them, it alters the viewer's interpretation. This makes the image more interesting, but it also takes longer for the viewer to process the image. Manipulating size constancy is a trick used often on Instagram. It can make for some really fun pictures like this one. It can be a fun artistic tool. For example, if my speech was on how images can be deceiving, this would be a good visual to consider. Intentionality is the key. In contrast, if I am listing examples of healthy food and make my grapes the same size as my pineapple, this is a careless use of size constancy. These two images are good choices because they are not visually complex. Keeping the sizes of the fruit consistent with what we expect helps maintain that simplicity. This is a simple fix. Just increase the size of the pineapple, and the viewer will not be distracted by the size. When designing an image, we want the text to be both legible and readable. Aren't those the same things? In the design world, they are not. Legible means that an image can be clearly seen. The viewer can discern what is shown. Readable means an image is easily recognizable as text. If a font is too decorative, a viewer wastes precious time trying to decide if it is written words or just decoration. This Old English font is rarely a good choice for communication. Serif fonts have ticks or wings at the end of each line. Here are some common examples. These thick and thin strokes can be slower to read. In design, they can be useful because they're visually interesting and they denote a period in history. If you want to remind a viewer of a culture or theme, a serif font can help. In presentations that are projected on a screen, serif fonts are harder to read. Decorative and cursive fonts should also be avoided for presentations. These fonts have a slant and letters can be visually crowded together. Younger viewers and those with vision impairments can find them less readable. Fonts that are narrow or unusually wide could also be distractions for viewers. So what projects well on a screen? Sans serif fonts do not have marks at the end of each line. The letters are not connected in any way. For projecting on a screen or for printing titles, a sans serif font is recommended. Notice the example title slide in the photo. It uses a sans serif font. Popular sans serif fonts that work well in a presentation are listed here. In closing, let's do a recap of the design concepts we have covered. First, we looked at the simple red apple and discussed how it has a literal meaning, but also denotes many other things. A well-chosen image can help you connect with an audience because images hold symbolism. We also considered a more complicated image like this grouping of apples. More complex images will take longer for the viewer to decode. Unless the image is tied to emotions that benefit the speaker's goals, they should be used with caution. We also learned that in presentations, complementary colors like these draw attention. When we want a receptive audience, cool colors work best, but to catch attention, warm colors add spark. Remember this young lady? She reminded us that by only showing the audience what they need to see, the speaker's point can be more quickly reinforced. Cultural coding reminded us that in our culture, people read from left to right and top to bottom. These rocks catch our eye because they aren't where we expect to see them. That is the power of placement. Next, we discussed scaling. When grouping images, we want to consider relative size. An exception is in images like this one where novelty can work to our benefit. Lastly was the topic of font. When presenting, sans serif fonts, those without ticks, are easiest to read for an audience. This can seem like a lot to remember. However, much of it we know instinctually. You may have been doing many of these things already, but consider the ones that stand out to you. Those are the ones that may not come naturally. Keep those design concepts in mind next time you create a presentation. Help avoid death by PowerPoint by designing your slides with intention. Strategically choosing images and fonts can help you connect with your audience in a meaningful way.